This is exactly what the Mets need. Well, the Mets continue to struggle and continue to find a multitude of ways to lose games. What can be done post-trade deadline to improve the team? David Stearns needs to seriously look at his options. I am Adam Choit, your host for today here on Mets Digest. And before we dig in on all that, I just want to give you guys a quick heads up, a quick reminder to please subscribe, because as you can see, nearly 68% of you guys watching these videos are not subscribed. So please take a quick second to do that. I appreciate it for sure. I'm getting good at that spiel for sure as well. But let's dig in on today's topic. The Mets are a bit of a mess right now. They have fallen 2.5 games out of first place in the NL East. Today they have a day off, and perhaps it's a time for them to reflect on all the stress that they're causing us, the fans, lately. But what can be done? I talked during my last video about calling up Jonah Tong from AA, the starting pitcher who has been dominant. And, of course, there's a very, very low percentage chance that that will happen. But there is a chance that the Mets will call up either Brandon Sproat or Nolan McShane to the big club, because there's increasing pressure on the team to do just that. Let's get into it, because I got a lot of graphics, I got a lot of quotes, I got a lot of images from all sorts of players and executives and reporters. Plenty of stuff to dig into today on those two pitchers. So let's do that. I'll start with some stories here. This is from John Harper, writing for SNY. Get Brandon Sproat or Nolan McShane up here pronto and put Frankie Montas in the bullpen as a multi-inning reliever. Then, maybe sooner than later, make room for the second of the kid pitchers, either as a starter or a bulk reliever, depending on whether Clay Holmes can build on his good start Tuesday, albeit only 5 innings. Both have pitched well in AAA, with Sproat on Wednesday being named International League Pitcher of the Month for July, and Montas has a 6.68 ERA in 7 starts for the big club. Either one is likely a better option, and even they wouldn't necessarily solve the problem of length for Mets starters, as their innings would likely be limited. Either or both could present an opportunity for Montas and even Holmes to slide into roles as bulk relievers. So yeah, lots of moving parts, lots of different options right there in terms of moving starters from the pen from the rotation to the pen. The Mets just need quality pitching, whether it's in the rotation or whether it's in the pen, and whichever way you want to divide up those innings with whatever talent the Mets can get on the roster, that's what they should do, is put the best pitchers they have in the best positions to have success. But let's continue on with Mr. Harper here. David Stearns himself indicated the looming presence of Sproat and McShane was the reason he wasn't willing to pay the high prices being asked for starting pitchers at the trade deadline, so the Mets must feel they're about ready. If their success in AAA translates to the big league level, it would eventually give the Mets the flexibility to create those quality bulk relievers they need. If a spot in the pen needs to be open, the Mets could certainly live without Ryan Stanek and his inconsistency. All in all, why not? It's time to try something different. And that's John Harper for SNY for right there. And it's they just have to keep throwing what at the wall and see what sticks to the team. And like I talked about during the Jonah Tong video, there's something to be said for a spark and providing a spark for the team. And that's really what this team needs. They need a jolt of youth. They need a jolt of energy. They need to shake things up. I know that there's many fans clamoring for the job of Eric Chavez, the hitting coach, and that would be another, shake 'em up kind of move for the team. Not that I'm calling for anyone's job here on these videos here, but the Mets definitely need to shake things up and get some new vibes going, some fresh vibes in the clubhouse. Something needs to be done. But let's continue on with this story here, because I got a bunch of quotes here from Anthony Dako from MLB.com. Those two are part of the Mets' finest crop of arms in a decade, of course, referring to Sproat and McShane. The type of pitching prospects who can change a franchise's short and long-term fortunes. To date, the Mets have been reluctant to call them up, citing various developmental and timing issues. If Sproat and McShane keep pitching like this, however, the Mets cannot keep them sequestered upstate forever. In Syracuse, he's referring to there. And this is more from Anthony Dako. Initially, Sproat experienced more professional success, dominating high A Brooklyn, while McShane adjusted to the realities of pitching and hitting in the pros. By his second season, McShane was ready to concentrate on pitching alone, which Mets officials had long considered his most likely path. When he did, he almost immediately blossomed, finishing last season with a 2.35 ERA over his final 3 starts at Double-A Binghamton. Initially, Sproat, the key, digging into McShane's arsenal here, the key is McShane's sweeper, a chameleon of a pitch that he manipulates in various ways. Most often, McShane attacks hitters with that offering, plus 3 fastball variations, a 4-seamer that rides across the strike zone, a 2-seamer that dives, and a cutter that tends to hone in on the corners, that should say. He also mixes in a curveball and a changeup to combat the movement of all 3 of those pitchers. Hitters must defend nearly 3 feet of real estate from east to west. So it's good to see that these guys are pitchers and they have an idea. These are not just throwers with big arms. These are guys who go to the mound with a plan and are going through the developmental process with the Mets, and they're ready. And the Mets roster, they need to shake things up at the major league level, and I can't reiterate that enough. And here's also more from Anthony Dako. That the Mets haven't called up either remains a matter of public contention, particularly as multiple starters on the big league club have struggled. But early on, the Mets didn't want to promote their top arms without knowing they could give them a long runway in the rotation. Team officials have cited baseball reasons too, quibbling with McShane's platoon splits and Sproat's relatively brief run of consistency, yet even Stearns admitted this week that both pitchers are getting close. And that's a big quote right there, that getting close thing, because that leaves the door open for vagaries, so to speak. What does getting close mean? Does that mean next week? Does that mean 3 weeks? Does that mean tomorrow? That's very up in the air, and he knows, David Stearns knows that the clock is running out in some regard, not on the Mets season per se at the very moment, but it's tenuous times for sure with this team as they continue to struggle. You don't want to fall 3, 4, 5, 6 games out of first place in the division. That's definitely something the Mets need to avoid, falling too far behind. This is from David Stearns himself as part of Anthony Dako's piece. I think it's always a combination of when developmentally those guys are ready and also when there's the need and how to fit it on the roster. And so we may get to the point where we decide that it's the best thing to do to bring one or both of them here, but we're not quite at that point yet. That's a lot of words right there. He said a lot of words right there, and I'm interpreting that as these guys are coming soon. One is coming soon, especially if the Mets continue to struggle in the rotation with Montas's ERA super ridiculous, close to 7, and with the rest of the rotation really continuing to not go deep in games, especially keeping a close eye on Holmes, given that this is his first go-around in a starting rotation after, of course, pitching the rest of his career previously entirely out of the pen. And this right here is from Chris McShane from Amazing Avenue. Also echoing a lot of the same sentiments that a lot of these others reporters and fans have been mentioning and talking about, just the thought about bringing these guys up. Either one of those pitchers could give the Mets an instant upgrade in the one area of the roster that they chose not to upgrade at the trade deadline, and continuing to stick with a workload-limited Holmes and the struggling Montas doesn't seem like the best plan moving forward, especially as the team is in the midst of lifeless play that's starting to threaten the team's chances of making the playoffs. That's Chris McShane, Amazing Avenue, articulating exactly what I was just talking about, essentially, that the clock is ticking on this season. You know, baseball's a very up and down season, and there was that long stretch, of course. There's been that long stretch where the Mets and the Phillies have been no more than a game and a half out, away from each other, distance from each other over the course of 40-plus days, 40-plus games, whatever it was. But there's no rule. There's no law. It's not written in stone that the NL East has to come down to the very last day, the very last 2-3 days of the season. You want to be careful because the Phillies could definitely pull away. They are a talented club too. Let's dig into some of the other reactions and quotes and things related to Sproat and McShane on the internets here. Here we got Mets bat flip, Nolan McLean, and this is a Nolan McLean quote on the idea of him and Brandon Sproat getting promoted to the big leagues. We always talk about how awesome it would be to get an opportunity, but at the end of the day, we're trying to be where our feet are. If we end up getting the call, we get the call. If not, you can't take anything for granted in AAA as well. Those guys will go out and beat you. Yeah, that's what you want to hear, from these guys, that they got their heads in the right place, they're mentally at the right place. Don't be surprised, be ready is of course a well-known quote, and that's the attitude that these guys seem to be taking on. So that's good to see that the mindsets of these pitchers and these young pitchers and these minor league players they're in the right place in that regard. Brandon Sproat, like Jonah Tong, is winning awards in the minor leagues. Brandon Sproat has been named International League Pitcher of the Month for July. 5 starts, 27 innings, .67 ERA, .81 WHIP, 33K in those 27 innings, and only 14 hits allowed in those 27 innings. So he's been dominant himself in AAA. So these promotions for either one, and even Tong too, for that matter, would be well deserved. Even though the perception from the media and some of the fans would be that we are desperate, and the Mets are desperate for some sort of spark, for starting pitching, for length, for all those things. And here's Brandon Sproat's last 5 starts from Metscast. Those numbers I just mentioned, but celebrated all over the internet as well, him being the International Pitcher of the Month. Here's some MLB Pipeline. Right-handers Nolan McLean and Brandon Sproat are knocking on the door of Queens, and Jonah Tong isn't far behind it from being in AAA at the very least, providing the Mets with blossoming young pitching talent they haven't seen in 10 years since the likes of Syndergaard and Matz. And that was something that was mentioned in a few of these articles that I came across, just the thought that the Mets really haven't had prospects like these since 2015. The last time the team was in the World Series, perhaps coincidentally. It's time to give Brandon Sproat and or Nolan McLean a shot. There's no way it could be worse than this. That's from Sleeper Mets. This refers to the team not winning games, not getting length out of the starters, and Frankie Montas' ERA being 6.68. I filled in the gaps on what the capital THIS means there for you guys. These are Nolan McLean's stats. I pulled these up the other day, but again, really focusing on his 2025 numbers in AAA. Pretty damn sparkling. 56 hits and 83 innings. 1.09 WHIP. What else we got here? 90 strikeouts and 83 and a third innings. So he's been very good, dominant, whatever terms you want to use to describe it. Just the numbers you want to see from a pitcher who's pretty damn close to getting to the major leagues. That's Nolan McLean's stats. And here are Brandon Sproat's stats. A little higher ERA in AAA this year. A little less experience as well. As you can see, just last year, he made the jump all the way from Brooklyn Single A to Binghamton the same year, and even finishing in AAA. So he pitched at all 3 levels last year. That's impressive to do, despite struggling towards the end of last year. But obviously this year, as you can see, the ERA has lowered a little. I see just 79 hits and 95 innings. A little less than a strikeout per inning compared to McLean. So maybe McLean would be the way to go if one of them is going to get the call first. But yeah, it's good that the Mets have some prospects. The future is certainly bright, even though it may seem dark for the Mets at this very moment on this day off here in 2025 in early August. But what do you guys think? Who do you want to see the Mets call up? Should they call up Sproat? Should they call up McLean? Should they call up Jonah Tong? Should they call up 2 of them? Should they call up? I don't think they could call up all 3. But let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things, and let's go Mets.